Hi everyone, welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff, and welcome also to the November Scrawler Challenge video. Just before we get into the meat and bones of that, I would like to just bring up the subject of the transit time for the Scrawler boxes. As I mentioned in the unboxing video, the transit times within the UK seem to be really slow, and I decided to contact Scrawlrbox directly about it, and I got a reply from a lovely gentleman called Chris who basically told me that they were unaware that this was happening, and he made the suggestion that it might be something to do with Royal Mail. I find it ironic that their distribution centre is in Glasgow. It's not in London or even in the middle of the country, it's in Glasgow, and yet some of our southern counterparts, I know there was a few of you left comments and emailed me, people in England actually got their Scrawlrbox before the people in Scotland, which is just, it's nuts. I mean, Glasgow's like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive from here. What is with that? So anyway, Chris had said to me that he was going to look into it and he will get back to me as soon as he figures out what's going on. So as it stands, we're not actually any further forward with that. So if you're in the UK and you're subscribed to Scrawlrbox, as soon as I've got any more information, I will relay it to you guys absolutely 100%. But I was also thanked for drawing their attention to it, because Scrawlrbox actually didn't have any idea that it was taking that long. Pip has come to see us and she has turned into a monster. She's massive. Say hi, baby. What's this, Pip? Look. What's this up here? What is this? Oh. So the Scrawler Challenge prompt for November was body parts, and in the grand tradition of me just flinging myself into things and not really thinking it through, I went for quite an odd design in my piece. Basically, this video of my drawing is just a set of really bad appendages. However, I needed the practice and I felt it was really important for me to do it, so although it was probably too advanced for my experience, I just went for it anyway and gave it my best shot. So let's get going and you can see how I did it.
Just did a bit of preliminary sketching in my sketchbook before commencing the actual piece. I was just trying out a few thumbnails and you can see me sort of scribbling about here and having a go at one. This was the one that I eventually decided on. I know I did say in the unboxing video that I wasn't quite sure what I was going for, and I have to admit I've picked quite an odd piece to do. I have decided to go with two people in a studio doing yoga, but incorporate that study of human appendages by having inserts with larger images of said body parts. So it's almost like a diagram.
Afterwards I did have a play about as suggested on the little card that came in the Scrawlrbox, and you can see here that I've done a few body parts. I started with an eye, which was using the purple Ergo Soft pencil, and then I had a wee bit of a bash with the ballpoint pen. I have to say it's not my best nose, but it was actually quite nice just to be able to try it out in my sketchbook. The third one is actually taken from the artist's work. I'm just going to grab this so I can show you. So this third one is actually taken from the artist's work, and I used it as a reference, and as you can see my hand looks considerably alien compared to Taylor's, which is a million times better, but this is why I need to practice. But it was nice to be able to have these as references just to try for yourself, just to have a little practice before you go on and do something crazy in your Scrawler Challenge like I'm about to do.
Usual first steps here, I'm taping down the paper, and this is purely for your benefit so I don't keep moving things about. But now you can see there that I have put some light on the subject as well, because once again it's dark as night. We're in Scotland, it's November. All the supplies are out, I am ready to go. So first of all I used the Koh-i-Noor 2B pencil to sketch out the background and the shape of the room. That was quite important that I got the perspective in that right, so that the rest of the picture made sense, because if that was off to begin with, then when I started adding in more details that was going to be a problem. There's the eraser, so we can check that off. This eraser was actually really helpful and I know to begin with I was like, oh no, pencil eraser, this is going to be terrible, but it was actually really substantial. I had to sharpen it a couple of times, which is fine, but that's what it's meant for, and I actually found it quite useful rather than just using it for the sake of using the supply that was in the box, so that was pretty cool. And in with the super duper ballpoint pen, which I got to work eventually. And I used this, just hardly used it at all. I used it very faintly in the background. If you remember in my initial sketch when I did the unboxing, which I will link in the card up here now and the description down below if you want to go back and watch that, I ended up drawing a sort of landscape background that had mountains in it. I kind of got attached to those mountains and I decided that I would have to incorporate them into the picture somewhere. So in the background of this studio is a picture of said mountains. Now my video cut out here, so in the top left hand corner you can see I used the turquoise Ergosoft pencil, and that was drawing one of the inset body parts, which is the shoulder and the elbow of my little man on the left hand side here, who is in tree pose. And for those of you who are not familiar with yoga, it's when you stand on one foot and you tuck your other foot in flat against your, well, either above or below your knee, and you put your hands in a sort of praying position in front of you. It's like a balance position. So this is me sketching out, trying to get the proportions right. One of the things that I'm struggling with when drawing human beings is getting the proportion of the legs in comparison to the rest of the body. I tend to draw the legs too short for the torso, and if I start with the legs, I end up with the opposite problem with, you know, the top half of the body. So that was something that I really wanted to work on in this piece, and I don't think the proportions are perfect, but I think they are a lot better than other efforts I've made just recently. So I really took my time over this part because I wanted it to be right. Here is the Kohinoor graphite stick, and using that again for my precious mountains in the background. I don't know what else to say about that really. I've gone in here with the blending stump to go over the graphite stick, and that's just to blend out the shadows on my mountains in the picture in the background. This was really in my head the only place that I was going to use the blending stump, so I wanted to make sure that I did it, but I ended up using it later on in the picture anyway, so happy days, at least it was getting used. I did plan out quite carefully before I started the main picture which items I was using where, and that was just to get the best sort of aesthetics for the picture. So I'd reserved this purple ballpoint bic to outline the sort of inset parts, and it's just so that they stood out from the background, and I reserved the pink pencil, the Ergosoft pencil, to do a bit of work on the walls of the studio, and again it's just to make sure that the right things are standing out in the right places. So I moved on here and I've used the blue Bic pen, and this is the only place that I use it for my little man in tree pose. It looked a bit bare and simplistic, so I decided at this point to go in with the turquoise pencil because it kind of matched the pen, and just put in a little bit of shading. And I didn't want to put too much onto the figure because, again, I didn't want it to really blend into the background. I wanted him to stand out, but I just felt it looked a little bit simplistic just in the ball pen, and the nib of the ball pen was too fat to shade with in such a small area. the nibs are quite big on them, so that was the only reason that I switched over to the pencil. But it actually turned out quite well and it gave quite a nice effect, so I was quite happy with what I decided to do. So for this circlet, I was working on the foot being tucked in against the leg, and hands and feet are things that I am really, really not good at. I tried my absolute best, but his foot still looks weird. Now, I kind of threw myself under the bus with this because I picked probably some of the most awkward things that you could possibly try and draw. I could easily have picked something a lot simpler and given myself an easier time of it, but I just figured I wasn't going to learn anything if I didn't try the harder things. And yes, his foot looks weird, but it is a million times better than, as again, any of my previous efforts. And I think it's, you know, by forcing yourself and pushing yourself to do things like that, it's how you learn. So okay, yeah, look, it's not great, it's a kind of wonky foot, but I learned quite a lot from that, so, you know, at least I've learned a lesson from it, and to me that is worthwhile, even if it doesn't look perfect. Decided I needed a bit of contrast for the floor, so I went back in with the Koh-i-Noor 2B pencil and the blending stump to give the floor just a little bit of colour and make it stand out and make the yoga mats pop out. Moving over to my right hand person, which I have decided to make a lady. Again, trying to get that variation in between the differences in body parts of men and women. She is in what is known as a tripod pose, which is quite a difficult yoga pose, and it's also quite difficult to draw. I must have redrawn her butt about 4 times because I was getting kind of a complex that I was giving her a big bum. Again, it was the same as the guy in tree pose. I spent quite a lot of time making sure I had the position right and doing my best to get the proportions right, especially as they're scrunched up and slightly skewed because of the way that she is kind of like folded up. Keeping ticking those supplies off the list here, this is me on to the pink Bic ballpoint pen, and I know that's kind of stereotypical. I've got blue for the guy and pink for the girl, but yeah, whatever. I did the same thing with her that I did with the gentleman, and I used the pink Ergosoft pencil just to add a little bit of shading into her, just to make her a bit more sort of dimensional instead of this sort of flat thing sitting on the paper. And obviously she needed to matchy the guy, because if I did it to him I had to do it to her too. I was starting to kind of regret my picture choice at this point, because the insets were getting more and more challenging, and I was just sketching here thinking to myself, why do you do these things to yourself? not only was it a pair of feet, so that's the section of her body that I'd sort of zoned in on, but they're pointing towards you, so the proportions are slightly skewed, and that made them even more difficult to draw. And I really struggled with this. I mean, I struggle with feet anyway, but my goodness, I just made things so difficult for myself by picking such a ridiculous pose. However, being stubborn, I was determined that I was going to give it a go and try my very best. And to be honest, they're not terrible, but it looks like two different feet. I was concentrating so hard on getting the angles and the shading right with the purple pencil that I didn't realise that one foot is a lot bigger than the other, so it looks as if two random strangers have plonked their feet together up in the air, which is quite bizarre. However, it's just a learning curve. It's just one of those things. Chalk it up to experience and move on. You can see that I did the floor in sections, and it's just because I wanted to get the main part of the drawing in, and just in case I wanted to change anything or alter things. So I'd kind of worked my way across left to right. Now, thinking about it and being sensible, I should probably have worked right to left because I'm left-handed, and I normally do, to be fair, but just not on this particular occasion. Anyway, so moved on to the last inset here, which I deliberately left till the end because I knew it was going to be even more painful than the foot situation. And this is me drawing her hand placed on the floor. So the hand is backwards, you don't see it from the front of her, you see her hand in reverse. So you're seeing down the inside of the wrist and her palm being flat on the floor and her fingers being splayed out away from you. This was so difficult, and to be honest, I think for my ability level and my experience level, I did okay with it. It's not, no one's going to look at it and go, wow, that's amazing, but it looks like a hand. The fingers are roughly in the right place, and the shading was kind of in the right place, so it was just so difficult. Every time I put the fingers on, it just looked as if someone had crushed her hand. She's like all these wonky fingers, and I concentrated so hard on getting it right, I realised at that point that I'd used the wrong coloured pencil. My intention was to have the purple pencils in the middle insets and have the top left and top right matching, so this one should have been turquoise. Now, interestingly, when I showed people the picture afterwards, nobody noticed it, but it bugs me because it would have been much more aesthetically pleasing if I hadn't made the mistake and done it in turquoise. However, at least I managed to draw the hand, so thankful for small mercies. Just back with the purple bit here, getting that outline done, and that is the insets finished, and I was so glad that I managed to get through it. With all the hard work done, all that was left was to finish off the background. So I'm back here with the pink pencil, and I made the back panel of the wall a little bit darker than the sides. I should probably have done it the other way round, but it doesn't really matter. It just, again, I was really sort of playing with the contrast. It made my little mountain painting stand out, and all that left was the white gel pen, which, to be honest, I kind of forgot about. So I added in some little details on the lines that go to the insets, and I ended up just using it to sign my name at the bottom. The picture was actually too pale to really utilise it for highlights as I'd originally intended. However, I still used it. Everything in the box was used, and it turned out reasonably well. I think, considering the difficulty level and my ability, I did okay. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you do, give it a thumbs up, and we shall see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.